Hi, my name is Miguel. Today, for my final presentation, I'm going to prove to you why lyrical rap is a niche genre rather than anything else, and why it thrives the way that it still does. I'm recording this on my little MacBook Air, so the camera quality is not going to be that great, and I have my little audio interface, so hopefully the audio outdoes the video. Right, genres over time really change. There is no static. There's the names that stay, but the genres themselves change along with the outlook and the rules really to be in a specific genre. I mean, the biggest example I can think of is pop music itself. It changes really with the seasons, depending on what's hot and popular when it comes to sound or songwriting or whatever. I mean, if you go back a couple decades, you're looking at the Beatles. The Beatles are really considered the pop music of their time, mostly because it's what was popular. It's not that it was, this A, B, whatever format, even though they are part of the people that pioneered it. It's really, that's just what was popular, i.e., meaning is part of the pop genre. Uh, I mean, they were really considered rock, and they pioneered a lot of what rock would become, and really what a lot of pop artists use. But at the time, they were more pop, though nowadays we consider them rock or classic rock. Another example of a genre that changes is something like rock itself. Rock was the Beatles, and then they created whatever, and they moved on, and then you had bands like Aerosmith and Kiss and I don't know, maybe like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, depending on what you were into, stuff like that, depending on songs and specific albums and what they were going for, was considered rock at one point or another. You move forward maybe a decade, 2, 3 decades, early 2000s, you're looking at different bands doing different things. It's got the same kind of layout, meaning you have a drummer, a guitarist, a bassist, a singer, some backup singers, a piano, keyboard, whatever you're looking for. That at the time in the early 2000s was considered rock and roll, but it was different than something like what had come before it in the 70s, the 80s, even the early 90s. All of that's, you can't really lump it all together, but it's what was considered rock at the time. If you were to take that, like bands like Aerosmith at that time, and then bring it into, especially now in the modern era, we don't consider it rock. Rock nowadays is like this hard, I mean, some would say kind of emo. It's this hard, independent, whatever you're trying to go for, rock. Though it still has the same layout, we consider that rock. And then those other bands are classic rock. A band like, I mean, my biggest example is still Aerosmith. A band like that, or Kiss, they were rock at that time. It changed. Now they're classic rock, or rock from the 70s or the 80s, more specific, making it more of a niche genre rather than it being specifically the rock itself. What that brings me to is my specific niche genre that I was looking into. I actually realized it this morning. Some might consider it not very niche, but the way that I look at it and the way that a lot of other people have come to look at it, especially in the year 2020, is lyrical rap. Rap through the years since its conception in 80s, 90s, you had a lot of these people, a lot of these groups. A big one that sticks out to me is NWA. You had a lot of these groups that were focused on, I mean, based on just some of what I've listened to, because I haven't listened to all of it, of course, is, it was the guns, it was the yelling, it was the cursing, it was the women, it was whatever you were into. It wasn't necessarily, of course, you had these crazy beats and whatever that certain people were trying to go for, but the commonality was mostly, this whole mindset of being a gangster rather than just a rapper. You were this gangster, you had this persona outside of the music itself. The music itself would have this specific wheelhouse and this specific like rules that you would follow, and that was considered rap, at least in that point in time. You get up to the early 2000s and things change, of course, as they do with all genres over time. A decade is a very long time. Music evolves yearly, let alone over a span of 10 years. When it comes down to the early 2000s, you had these bands like NWA or like whoever else was around. I just use them as an example because they're who I used to listen to. They were no longer rap. They were gangster rap. It was more niche and maybe segregated isn't the right word, but more separated, more individualized into a specific point. Instead of just saying, this is rap, this is what I want to listen to, I want to listen to gangster rap specifically, which was its own wheelhouse and its own part, though it was considered basic rap at the time. Brings me to my point now, lyrical rap. Lyrical rap is not the modern. It doesn't fit what the modern persona of hip hop or rap is. Lyrical rap in the early 2000s was crazy. It was all about, what can I say? How can I say it with a flow, with this beat? What kind of, entendres and double meanings or, little bits of wordplay on a specific beat or whatever can I accomplish? I think the biggest example for me isn't someone who's independent when it comes to lyrical rap at that time in the early 2000s when it was just considered rap was Eminem. Just because I've been an Eminem fanboy since, since I found my dad's CD for Recovery back in like 2009 when I was in like 6th grade or something, or 2010. Lyrical rap then, for him, he put out his sophomore album, like the Marshall Mathers LP or the Eminem Show, and it would sell millions of copies in, the first week or whatever. And now 2 of those albums are some of the few diamond albums that exist in the world. They're some of the few albums to ever go diamond, and they're in that list because lyrical rap is what rap was, and that's why it was big. You look at it now, he just put out an album a handful of months ago, Music to Be Murdered By, completely still lyrical, using a lot of modern technology and a lot of modern beats and a lot of modern rap artists, but it's still lyrical and it's still what he was going for. Complete, only streaming, no physicals. Debut week sells around 280,000. Compared to, a million plus first week, it's very different. And it's a completely different point where it's the same exact thing that he was doing before to an extent. But the outcome is very different because rap as itself over the last 20 something years has changed dramatically. Nowadays, I think rap is really more, there's mumble rap and there's melodic rap, at least from some of the people that I've talked to, because it's not really my type of music anymore, just because it changes like that. Modern rap is not the same as it was 15 years ago. Now you have the mumble and you have the melodic, and you still have people trying to say and do close to the same things as lyrical, but the focus is different, meaning lyrical rap is not rap. It's 2 different things, making it more of a niche genre. Lyrical rap is, at least to me, it's not a crazy unknown niche like drone folk music that I was thinking about doing, but it is not the mainstream. It's more niche, and there's a lot less people into it than the modern rap, meaning there is this sense of separation. I think the biggest artist to me when it comes to independent lyrical rappers is someone that I discovered back in like 9th grade in high school. His name is Sick World. At the time when I found him on SoundCloud, his name was Sick Kid. He was like a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid learning what he's doing, figuring it out, posting free streaming or whatever to SoundCloud. So there wasn't this big outreach. There's not a lot of money. He was unsigned at the time and he was doing whatever. Circa, 6, 7 years later, it's very different. He changed his name to Sick World. He's still unsigned. He worked on a completely independent original album, put it out, I think it was last year or the year before. It's called When Stars Align. And the album charted on Billboard. It's not that he had this crazy $1 million multi-platinum selling success, but there is growth through independence. Of course, it took a lot of time for him to get there. He put out EPs and songs and whatever, and they've never charted. Even though to certain artists, Billboard itself doesn't really matter. It charted, and he's made the difference. And the success that I've seen from him specifically comes from social media. And I think that's the greatest example we can use in the modern day, is how social media, things like Facebook at the time or SoundCloud or Instagram, has influenced the power that some people can have, regardless of your circumstance or your money or whatever. If the passion is there and even just a little bit of what you're doing when it comes to social media, you can push forward in it. At the time it was SoundCloud, he had a couple thousand people listening to him, including myself, and doing whatever. And now I checked 10 minutes ago and he has 1.5 million monthly listeners on Spotify. So of course there's growth there really through things like social media. I don't think I've ever seen him put out something like an ad or whatever. It's just word of mouth, and it's just posting and consistency and whatever. I think I'll play maybe a small excerpt. A song that sticks out to me, of course there's a playlist that I'll have linked below, but a song that sticks out to me is something like Hella Bars. That's completely lyrical. Anybody trying to stop me is a habit. Girl, so that's up to me, and I just try to catch it. My game one is sick, my she's a dramatic. My sex game stupid, I need special ed classes. If you can't see that I'm living, it's in classes. The world's telling me to fall. Ain't in my life, but determine the length of my success every night. Or even, when it comes to lyrical and meaning, you go through something like, what is it, from like 6 years ago, a song called So Alone. Just about emotion. Some of them haven't aged too greatly, just because, he was young and whatever, but that's the independent artist to me, and my niche is lyrical rap. Some may consider it not, but I think in the modern sphere, when rap has really become the modern day pop, they are not the same thing. And as time goes on, we'll see more and more how they are more niche based on what people are into. But at this point in time, I can say lyrical rap is niche 100%.